Welcome back to Mornings. Well, on July the 25th, 1978, Louise Joy Brown made history when she became the world's first test tube baby. Now, 30 years on, in vitro fertilisation accounts for 3% of the population, and for many couples, it is the only way that they can ever have the hope of having a child. Dr. Penny Adams is with us this morning with the latest on IVF, and she's joined by an IVF mum, Jodi Panayotov. Jodi, welcome to the show. Hi, Pen.
Thank you. Hi, Kerry-Ann.
I was talking about the statistics earlier that there's one child in every primary school classroom in this country is an IVF baby. When I looked at those stats, I was a little taken back.
I think it's about 3%? It's about 3%. 3% of births now are IVF babies.
Wow.
Amazing technology.
It is. Technology is an extraordinary thing. Now, we've heard of the aspects of women clearly having babies later in life, and the fertility clearly drops after the age of 30. Is that the primary reason that people go for IVF?
Yeah, up until 1979, I think about 1 in 4 births was in women over the age of 30. By 1999, it was 1 in 2 births. So women are having their babies later, and basically, if you look at a graph of your fertility after age 30, it drops off. And so because women, for various social reasons, are having their babies later, I mean, having a baby is not necessarily a great career move, even in this day and age. So they're delaying having their babies, but that combined with, the drop-off in fertility means that it's often harder for them to fall
also
pregnant.
there are concerns in terms of male fertility as well. That is part of the aspect. But IVF is a concentration this morning in terms of women. Now, your story, Jodi, you were 35, a flight attendant?
Yes, that's right.
And you decided to have children. Were you surprised at the fact you were having difficulty?
I was, and I think part of the reason was because as a flight attendant, I actually worked with probably thousands of women, over a period of 14 years, and nobody ever talked about, I heard all about their births and their episiotomy stitches and all that type of thing, but nobody ever spoke about, for instance, having a miscarriage or actually having problems conceiving. And there was even, like in the flight attendant lounge, there was this chair that was supposed to be the one that everybody kept sitting on and getting pregnant. I sat on that chair a long time, nothing ever happened. But,
so how long did you try?
I tried probably for about 3.5 years before I eventually had my daughter, but during the time I had a number of different issues and difficulties with it. I had a couple of miscarriages.
So at 35 you decided to try and have a child, so it took you 3.5 years. So,
yes.
And having miscarriages, that is a very, very, it's a tough thing to go through.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yeah. It's a loss, really. Because you get all your hopes up, all your expectations. You start looking ahead, dreaming about this child, and then suddenly that's taken away from you. And it's really, really devastating.
And you must see this a lot as well, Penny.
Oh, yes,
We've discussed it on this program.
Yeah, and I think I don't think women. I think women underestimate what sort of psychological things they'll go through when they're trying to conceive if they don't get pregnant. And I have, over 22 years as a GP, have watched these women, and they go slightly mad when they don't get pregnant, and they almost torture their partners as well, and they get this obsession, and everything revolves around trying to conceive, and it's almost like it's out of their control. And I must confess, I was reading Jodi's book when the great debate was on. I found it a hell of a lot more interesting than Kevin Rudd or John Howard, and it's a great book to read because it's so funny. It's quite a desperate time for women, but this book accurately describes all these weird and wonderful thoughts that go through your mind and the things that you do.
Did you go slightly mad, Jodi?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Barking mad almost.
Because you just become so obsessed. Your whole life starts to revolve around it.
What about your relationship proper then?
Yes, well, I was actually very lucky. My husband was very supportive. He just kind of followed along with whatever I was doing, and but he actually got off quite lightly compared to some men. I mean, some women have their men on Brazil nut diets and, drinking nothing but green leaf tea and having to change their whole underwear collection.
What actually works then? We know IVF, and I was doing Good Morning Australia in the early 80s when it became a little bit more accessible. I knew then the process of IVF is not easy, and it is devastating, and it's expensive.
Yep. On average, it's between $2,000 and $6,000 per cycle, and there's a 30%, on average, a 30% pregnancy or baby rate per cycle. But obviously, it's much more successful when you're younger than when you're older.
How much did it cost you?
It was several $1,000s. I know that. I mean, we kept paying little bits out here and there for every step of the way. So I think it probably was around.
But in this day and age, it is still, the techniques are as sophisticated as they've ever been, but they're still not perfect.
No, they're not, Kerry-Ann. And there's the money, and then there's the medical hassles, but there's also the emotional turmoil that you go through that people don't realise they're going to go through. And certainly, if you want to ruin your sex life, the best thing is to try and get pregnant and not.
Yeah, it's such a tough one.
Yeah.
Any advice for women out there then? Start earlier.
Yeah, I mean, when I was first in general practice 22 years ago, we were not allowed to sort of mention the big P question. It was politically incorrect to sort of say, when are you going to have a baby? Whereas we're being told now, a woman comes in and she's 30, ask her, are you planning to have a baby? And certainly, if you're having problems falling pregnant, then read Jodi's book, because it's got it all there in a very sort of funny and light-hearted way. It's great.
In fact, Jodi, congratulations on the book.
Thank
It's
you,
important to talk about it, and Dr. Penny, thank you as always.
That's a pleasure, Kerry-Ann.
We've got